Hey everybody, how's it going? Tim Eister here, and welcome back to Gasparilla County, where in this episode, I'm going to start to build a key, which will take heavy inspiration from CS2 in southwestern Florida, more specifically in Sarasota. And this key is pretty special because it is home to America's #1 beach. Allegedly, that's what the signs say. But you know, I gotta say, it is a really beautiful beach. I've been to this beach a number of times in various trips down to Florida, and I always enjoy going to this part of Florida because it's, you know, don't get me wrong, you can get like super busy and crowded, but the beach is pretty massive, so I've never had a hard time finding a place to sit. And yeah, it's just a really nice beach. The sand is great. There's lots of amenities nearby, and it's just nice vibes all around. And CS2 in general is a really nice place too, because it's a little different from a lot of other places in Florida due to its touristic nature. It's very high density. Well, I shouldn't say high density, but it's like low density packed really tight. And what I mean by that is, you know, there's just a lot of shops in close proximity. There is just a lot of amenities, things to do. There's lots of condos and rental places. And, you know, it's just overall a really nice place. So in the game, what I'm getting started on here is I am going to have to build a main connection into this key. And this is where I'm going to do it over here. So I'm going to build this little at grade interchange. It's kind of like a Y interchange, but there's no overpasses or anything like that. This is very typical of Florida. Yeah, and this is going to be the main connection into this area for now. There's going to be like 2 main connections onto the key. There'll be 2 bridges, but I'll get onto that second bridge in a later episode. But yeah, this is going to be the main connection for now. And I gotta mention, by the way, this episode is almost all in time-lapse mode because there was just so much work to be done in this episode. There was no way I was gonna be able to live play through everything that I wanted to build in one episode. And plus, this episode was a doozy, guys. Oh my god. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong. Like, I was just facing problem after problem after problem. You know, the fact that this episode got out at all is kind of a miracle because I was just facing so many problems left and right. And anyway, I'll go over those problems as I'm developing the town. But anyways, just know that the area that I'm building today is not perfect by any means. And, you know, I'm hoping to improve on it as we go along and as the city grows. But just know that, you know, if you look closely at the end of this episode, there's maybe a number of little things that, you know, could be improved on. But it's the best I could do, considering all of the challenges that I faced in this episode. Anyway, so the first thing that I'm getting started on here is I'm going to build a whole series of canals. Again, this is very typical of Florida, and CS2 has a ton of them. I didn't really notice at first when I was browsing Google Maps. But then I noticed, like, wow, these keys are like really tightly packed and they're pretty much all over. So I'm trying something a little different this time around. My very first time building a complicated canal system was a number of episodes ago, where we built, I guess, the turtle neighborhood. I forget exactly what the name is. But anyways, you guys, I'm sure, know what I'm talking about. That was my very first attempt at anything like this. And it turned out all right, although my biggest gripe with it is that there's too much spacing between the canals and the houses. And you know, because it was my first time doing that kind of neighborhood, I wasn't really sure what kind of spacing there should be and what size lots I should build. So I learned a lot from that. And I'm trying here not to make the same mistakes with this canal system. So you can see that the canals are much more tightly packed together. I'm not leaving as much room for bigger lots for all the houses. The canals are much narrower as well. I think I did 30 meters the last time around. And in this episode, I am reducing that to 20 meters. I feel like that's a good width for a canal. But anyways, we'll see once the houses and stuff start to develop in this area. And of course, the way that I'm developing these canals, I'm trying to make it as similar as I can to CS2. So some of the patterns are going to look pretty similar to the actual CS2 in real life. I think I did a pretty decent job on that. So I'm going to go ahead here and plop a couple of water spawners, trying not to flood this entire area because that always ends up in disaster. So just trying to be careful here, not doing anything too drastic. But once all these spawners are in place, we're going to get started on the road layout, which, as usual, I am just going to use these narrow streets here. I'm not going to build any like big major roads in this area, and it's just going to be nice little streets, no sidewalks, nothing like that. Very car-centric, as is the rest of the US. And, you know, we're just going to make this a nice little quaint little neighborhood. Now, with the road layout being more or less complete, I'm going to start to work on a big parking lot near the beach. So just like Siesta Beach, it is a completely public beach. It's actually free to access the beach itself. However, you got to pay for parking. And there's a big official parking lot in the vicinity, but then there's a lot of other little private parking lots too that you can just pay cash for the day kind of thing. But this is going to be a big, massive public parking lot for the beach area, and I'm going to be using a variety of mods and different assets to make this parking lot. First of which, I'm going to use these invisible roads here to create parking spaces. So using the extra networks and areas mod by Mimonsi, and this mod allows you to plop invisible roads with parking lot spaces, and it allows you to create your very own custom parking lots. And what's even cooler is they're totally functional on top of all of this. So it's a little bit quirky to use because you can't really connect these parking lot roads with other roads, or else it can break your save, if I understand correctly, or, you know, just bad stuff happens. So you just have to be careful of that. But even with that, these roads are totally usable. Cars will actually swoop in, pick a spot, and they'll park their cars. It's pretty cool to see, actually. So there's a few steps that you have to follow in using this mod, as you can see here. So I'm first laying down all of the parking spaces, but then we have to go in with some surface areas, some pavement textured surface areas, and fill in all of these parking spaces, as you'll see in just a moment here. But yeah, overall, super cool mod, very easy to use, honestly. There's nothing to it. It's just a little time consuming if you're creating like a large parking lot. But you know, for a very, you know, for a starting mod, this is really, really good. This adds a ton to the game if you really want to get into detailing and that kind of stuff. So what you see here is about the size of the parking lot. This is pretty much what it's going to be. So, you know, quite large, probably a couple hundred spots, which is, I'd say maybe about the same size as the parking lot in real life in this area. But anyways, as you can see here, I'm laying down some textures. This is actually using a different mod. This is, hang on, let me just boot up my game here. This is the extra detailing tools. So this is from Triton Supreme, and this allows you to do a bunch of stuff. Okay, so it allows you to place down textures, props, pretty much anything you can think of in the game you can plop with this mod. So this is what I'm using to place down these surface textures, and it just works really, really great. As you can see, this is the almost finished product for from the actual pavement of the parking lot. And I went ahead and I used sort of a lighter texture, this concrete texture instead of pavement. I think it looks really cool and unique. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the parking lot itself. I'm going to start to detail now the area around the parking lot. So I'm going to add a series of paths. I'm going to add some trees, palm trees, you know, stuff that I can use to make it look more, you know, tropical Florida themed. We're still kind of limited on that front. So you gotta make the limited amount of assets and props work to get that look that you're looking for, right? When you're building like a Florida themed city. But yeah, it's getting better, guys. There's like, since I last played, you know, I've taken a little bit of a break in the last couple of weeks in this game, but I hopped back into it, and to my surprise, even in that short period of time where I wasn't really keeping up with the game, there was like a number of new mods that have been released, and it's just really exciting to see this level of modding, you know, that's in Cities Skylines 2 right from the get-go. You know, we're getting some really, really cool mods, and pretty soon we'll be getting some custom assets too, which I'm really excited about. But you know, it's fun to see that Cities Skylines 2 is really starting to get its foot on the ground, and yeah, I think it's going to become as much of a great game, I think, in the next little while as Cities Skylines 1. So I should mention in this episode too, the reason why I'm in time-lapse mode so much is this episode is going to be heavily focused on detailing. So I'm going to be adding a ton of props. Well, not so much props, but it's I'm playing around with like a whole bunch of mods, and I'm just building out like a large area, right? So doing this in live play, this episode would be like 3 hours long, and I didn't really feel like doing it in multiple parts. So doing a little bit of testing here. So I strung a road over in this corner, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm gonna go the extra mile. I'm gonna delete that road, and I'm gonna create my own custom road using this these textures here, and using the extra detailing tool, which includes all of these parking spaces. It's really easy to create your very own custom parking lot shape. Now, unfortunately, these parking spaces are not functional. They're decals, so they're just paint. But that's okay, because most of this parking lot is totally functional anyway. So if there's only a little portion of it that isn't, I'm totally fine with that. So this is kind of where my problem starts. I set out to create this really compelling, realistic beach area as much as I could. And to do that, it was going to require a lot of detailing. And of course, move it is essential when building these kind of things. And this is where I had to do a little bit of experimentation. So as you saw, I placed down a bunch of bushes, and I tried to make like this really thick brush that can be found on Siesta Beach, like sort of on the upper banks of the beach. It's all like brush and shrubs and that kind of stuff. Kind of creates a buffer between the urban areas and the beach. But unfortunately, that was going to be very, very difficult to do with just the default tools even with Move It, it's not really possible because the copy paste feature doesn't quite work yet. So I was thinking to myself, oh my god, this is going to be crazy. Like, I have to populate this entire beach with just shrubs and bushes and everything manually. Like, this is going to take hours that I didn't necessarily have. So I did the next best thing and I moved on to other things, and I felt like I was just going to deal with that later. So what I'm doing now is I'm plopping down a whole bunch of picnic blankets and parasols. So I had to do a little bit of sleuthing to figure out what can I make this beach work with? How can I make a realistic looking beach with such little assets and props, right? So I scoured all of the different assets and tried to figure out, you know, what props within those assets could work on a beach. So chairs and stuff were pretty easy because I just searched for the word chair and there's like 50 choices that popped up. So that was pretty easy, but you know, things like parasols and picnic blankets, you know, that wasn't so obvious. I was searching for like beach and beach towels and that kind of thing, and nothing was coming up. But thankfully, using the extra detailing tools, you can actually sort by different prop types. So there's residential props, there's commercial props, there's industrial props. So each like category of building has their own set of props. And I was able to find all of these like picnic blankets, all that kind of stuff. So I eventually figured it out, and you know, it looks just as good as, you know, if I actually had like proper beach towels and blankets and all that kind of stuff. So I was really excited that I was able to make that work. And the parasols, yeah, they look pretty cool too. And you know, it makes it look like a very realistic looking beach. So I'm going to take a little break here from building the beach. I'm going to provide some essential services to this area, and I'm going to start to zone here in just a moment. But this is pretty much a new town, right? Because it's far away from actual like central Gasparilla, like the actual town. So it has to be fully functional. I have to provide all the necessary services, schools, you know, hospitals, everything. But as you can see, this is where challenge number 2 came out. Look at my residential demand. It's literally at 0. And I have a huge industrial and commercial demand. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to create like a mini downtown, just like there is in real life on Siesta Key. There's like this really nice little downtown area with restaurants and bars and, you know, grocery stores, all like the essentials. They're kind of like coagulated to this little central area, which is super walkable. It's beautiful. So I'm really trying to recreate that in this area. You know, I'm just zoning very small, just little tiny, you know, 2x4 and 2x3 zones, getting little shops in here. And it's having a little bit of an effect, I would say. It's boosting some higher density residential demand, but you know, it's still not enough to populate this entire area. So I tried a bunch of things. I tried placing down some services. I tried placing some industrial buildings kind of dotted around the map, because I don't want this map to have like a huge industrial area. I may not have a choice though. That's just one of the things that I tried to do to kind of boost my residential demand a little bit. But what ended up working actually is I just pretty much left the game running overnight after I zoned all of these areas, and to my surprise, this area actually built itself all up. But anyway, that led to some more issues, which I'll explain a bit later. But anyways, the next step that I'm going to be working on is zoning this entire area, and as you can see, I think I calculated my things quite well here. I was able to fit lots of like 3 blocks wide houses between the roads and the canals. Some areas I could only fit like 2 wide, which is perfect. You know, there's all different sizes of houses and whatnot. And, you know, as I've been learning in Cities Skylines 2, you don't want to zone too big. All right, so let's jump into some live play here and I'll explain what's going on. So I am struggling to build up this neighborhood over here because I don't have any residential demand at all. So things are taking forever, and I'm just not really getting where I want to be in this episode. Unfortunately, that's just how it goes sometimes. But I think I know the reason for this, and there is ways that I can fix it. So right now, if I take a look at my education screen, you'll notice that the highest level of education that you can achieve in Gasparilla right now is high school. Now, in real life, you can get by just fine with a high school diploma, but in Cities Skylines, you really need a college or university degree to get that good job, to be able to afford a nice house and all those nice things. So right now, I'm kind of stuck in a perpetual cycle of people graduating from high school, and really the only available opportunities for them are retail and industrial jobs, right? So in order to get some good office demand, which really gets some good jobs into the economy, which allows people to afford nice houses, we really got to get some better education opportunities here in town. Because I think until we do that, we're just going to be stuck in this cycle of barely having any demand whatsoever. And I don't want to pollute the entire map with some dirty industry. You know, I want my citizens to actually have like good high-tech jobs, and you know, we'll eventually get some nice office buildings here in town. So I've chosen this location over here on this little peninsula to plop down a college campus for starters. So I'm going to start off with this, and I'll eventually make my way to a university, which I'm not completely sure where I want to plop yet. I'll probably just like maybe shove it along this side because the campus is rather large. So maybe I'll do that. But for now, I'm going to start with the college campus, which is a lot smaller, and I'm going to go ahead and plop this right over here, I think. Kind of lined up with the terrain here. And I don't think I'm going to plop any upgrades for now. I have no need for an extension wing. College library provides a better chance of graduating, but it's $50K a month. And yeah, I don't want my expenses to run away too far from my revenues. So I think this is going to cut it for now. Now let's go ahead and hook this up to the rest of the map. I'm just simply going to connect this up like so. And let's put in some left turn lanes, or one left turn lane, and then I'll make a right turn lane on this side. And I'll just make no left turns here to make this not look as weird. And then of course I'm gonna remove these crosswalks, right? There's no crosswalks. Why do we need crosswalks? Just get a car, right? Oh yeah, so now I need to hook this up to the water system. Okay, so let's do that. Let's run this under this bridge. And from this point, I'll just go under, well, this is supposed to be US 41, but it has been renamed to the Birch Highway, it looks like. I don't know why that is, but oh, it's still US 41 over here. So here, let me let's fix this. Let's do US 41. Oops, I have Capellix on. US 41. There. Perfect. Oh, no, not perfect. Oh, here's the problem. And that should fix the problem, and it has. Perfect. All right, so okay, we already got some students coming into the campus, getting their college education, but it's gonna take some time, guys, before the benefits of this college really start to take effect. You know, the students have to actually enroll into the college. They have to complete their academic years and finally land a good job and then get a home and all that. So there's really going to be like a delay of potentially a couple of in-game years before we really start to see the benefits of this over in this neighborhood, which is kind of unfortunate. So maybe for the remainder of this episode, I'll just have to kind of slowly pluck away at like just a few houses being built at a time. You can see that I have a little tiny sliver of low density residential demand, so hopefully that'll be enough to eventually fill in all of this. But yeah, it's kind of a slow going episode. I really wanted to be able to finish this and like complete this entire region in this episode. We'll see if it's possible, but yeah, I don't know. Okay, jumping back into time-lapse mode, I'm going to spend some time with more zoning, more specifically medium density zoning in some of these areas here where, you know, I want there to be little condo looking buildings. So, you know, I don't want very big skyscrapers and stuff like that in this area. You know, in CS2, it's still very low, right? Like the skyline is very low with the occasional, you know, mid-rise here and there, mid-rise condo buildings and such. So I'm really trying not to get any crazy big buildings in here. So I'm zoning very small lots. Now, of course, on CS2, with it being a really touristy area, it's a tourist hotspot. There's going to be a ton of like Airbnbs and condos and motels, those kind of buildings, which, you know, are quite flat, but still, I guess, like medium density. The whole area is like medium density. Like not everybody has big yards on CS2, and you know, the buildings are quite close together. So that's really the feel that I'm trying to go by. Now, the tallest building on this key is going to be a very recognizable building, I guess, if you live in the area. There's this big, what I think is a condo building right almost in like the downtown area of CS2, and it just stands out from the whole rest of the area. You know, it's maybe like a 10-story building or something like that. So this building here that you kind of briefly saw off to my left right now, this is the building that I'm talking about. So this is kind of representing whatever that building is. I didn't really research into it. I didn't look into what that building actually was, but if you're from Sarasota, I'm sure you know what I mean. All right, and after literally leaving my game running overnight, just so all of these little residential areas would get built up, I started to actually build the beach. So I'm going to detail here a little bit. I'm going to remove these parking lots on the side of the roads. I would much rather it be grass, you know, it makes it a little bit more aesthetic. But yeah, now it's time to start working on the actual beach. And for this, I am going to use the extra detailing tools in combination with some texture packs from Sully. So Sully on the Paradox Workshop has released a whole ton of beach texture areas, right? Now the only problem is this, I guess, is like challenge number, what is it? What am I, 4 or 5 now? I had this entire beach laid out when I made this map, but this was done by using the developer mode and plopping down the default texture for sand when I initially created this map. And the problem is, you know, it's not very like Florida-esque sand. It's very brown. But luckily, Sully made this really white sand texture that really gives off that Florida vibe. So I had to delete my entire beach area, one node at a time, one little segment at a time, which took like 30 minutes, literally. So that was kind of a bit of an annoyance, but whatever, it had to be done, right? If I was gonna get the results I wanted, I have to just plow through it. But you know, it wasn't too bad. So here I am going over where the old beach used to be with these new textures here. And the mod pack, or the texture packs from Sully, are really great for beaches because there's a number of different sand textures. So there's actually like just a base sand texture, and then there's the wet sand texture, and then there's also like these transition textures which can kind of fade your beach into the greenery. So this is really great to use. I highly encourage you to check out Sully's texture packs if you ever plan on building anything like this. And another thing too is there's not only texture packs. Sully has also made a bunch of like graffiti packs and just a bunch of decals for cracks on pavement, and you know, it's finally possible to get into some really fine detailing in City Skylines 2 with these new mods coming out. You know, it's a really, really interesting time. I eventually want to get back into the high level of detailing I used to do in City Skylines 1, but I feel like right now what's missing is assets. You know, the buildings in City Skylines 2, there's only a finite number of them, you know, and they're really, like I was saying a minute ago, they only fit like this New York theme, right? Or, well, I guess European as well. If you're building a European city, it's probably a bit more okay, but yeah, for creating a Florida themed city, it definitely is a challenge. So anyways, back to what's going on in the game. As you saw, I placed down a variety of different textures, and as you can see between these buildings and the beach, there's like this transition kind of texture. By itself, it doesn't look that great, but in combination with some trees and shrubbery, you'll see that it's gonna look really, really awesome, guys, by the end of this episode. I'm actually really happy with the way this particular thing turned out. Like the actual beach. I'm really happy with. So if you look at Siesta Beach on Google Maps, you'll see that there's a ton of these little desire paths that have been carved out from the shrubbery, you know, just from the people walking to and from the beach. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm just creating a variety of little paths, and it's you know, that this is what makes the beach, in my opinion, is like this transition strip from the sand to the buildings and such. So here I am just kind of experimenting with trees and shrubs, all that kind of stuff. Like I'm trying to make the transition as smooth as possible from sand to urbanism. It's a little bit of a challenge because, you know, the difference in these textures are quite abrupt. So really the only way to do this is to just load it up with bushes and trees and whatever you want. But, you know, honestly, guys, this whole build, well, not the whole build, but like this beach specific build went way better than I expected. And it was a ton of fun too. So over here on the very tip of this key, I'm gonna build a little park. The reason being, well, there's not really enough room to build any residences and stuff here. And plus, in an effort to I guess stimulate some residential demand to come up, I placed a little bit of industrial buildings, as you just briefly saw them on your screen right there. And you know, the pollution is kind of going in that direction, so I kind of sacrificed the tip of this peninsula to build out some industries. And you know, to my surprise, it actually worked a little bit. You know, my demand is getting a little higher now in medium and high density, but it made it so I couldn't build anything else in this area. So a nature park it was. And, you know, to be honest, it's quite fitting too for this area. There was no big nature parks in this whole key, so I felt like, you know, this was the place to build it. Tennis courts, basketball courts, trails, all that kind of stuff. You know, there's tons and tons of tennis courts in Florida. You know, it seems to be up there in popularity there, along with golf. Speaking of which, there's going to be some more golf courses on this map eventually. I think I mentioned that before, but you know, for the golf fans out there, you'll be pleased to know that there's going to be a ton more golf courses in this series. So now pretty much I'm just putting some final touches on this area, plopping down some trees, you know, making the area just feel more full, a little bit more alive. But just check out this transition strip, I'll call it, guys, between the sand and you know, the buildings and stuff. It just, I'm really happy with the way this turned out. And also, provided by Sully are these awesome, really, really great wave decals. They just look amazing. They don't move like they did in Cities Skylines 1. There was a mod at some point where these waves, they were actually like moving. I forget where that mod came from or who made it or whatever, but nonetheless, I mean, just these textures look really, really fantastic. And at this point, I'm just gonna build some final touches on the beach. One thing I did notice while in Siesta Beach is there's a number of resorts that are right on the beach, and they have their own chairs that you can rent or that you can use, and they own like part of the beach, right? So nobody else can use those chairs except the actual hotel guests. So I decided to make just a couple of these little areas, and just little things, right? And I just plopped down a little booth where you can maybe go and buy some drinks. And last but not least, I am plopping down a series of lifeguard towers using a chair. I forget what this chair is, but it's another kind of high chair. I think for like a tennis court or something this prop is on. But anyways, I just plopped a whole row of them on the beach. Oh yeah, and this last thing here that I'm building right now, so this random path that goes out to the water, this is actually a feature at Siesta Beach, and it's a ramp for handicapped folks. So they have like these wheelchairs with big beefy tires to allow handicapped people to be wheeled out onto the beach, and they're able to enjoy the beach just like everybody else. And they have this big mat that goes from, I guess, the main lobby area of the beach, we'll call it, right up to the water. So it just makes it a bit easier to push those chairs onto the beach area. Well, guys, this is the finished product, and does it not look great? Look at that, guys. Like, I'm surprised how real this looks. Even though these textures, they don't move, they just look fantastic. And you know what? It kind of looks like they do move just because of the water movement here. You can see that they're kind of shifting shapes. But yeah, I'm just so pleased with this beach, guys. One thing you'll just have to get over, I guess, is these New York themed buildings. These these row houses are kind of made to represent these little condo buildings and motels that you'll find along the main road in Siesta Key. But if you just zoom out a little bit, it just looks awesome on the surface. It looks awesome on the surface, guys, but under the hood, oof, it's a different story. We're dealing with a ton of abandonment. The area has actually started to de-zone a little bit, so I just kind of rushed to get this thing done while the game was paused, just before the area kind of died out. And amazingly, if I click on a lot of these houses, that one's occupied. But yeah, you'll notice that a lot of them are totally unoccupied. Well, maybe I'm clicking on the wrong ones here, but you can see, yeah, there's a ton of houses that are totally unoccupied. So I think houses just got built, and then either the people left or they just never moved in. But anyways, they eventually become abandoned. And oh my god, here we go. Our big skyscraper just collapsed right in front of all of our eyes, leaving, well, oh my god, wow, that's, yeah, that's terrible, guys. Oh, we just had a bunch of casualties from this collapsing building. I thought it was abandoned, but I don't know, maybe there were some squatters in it. But yeah, that kind of ruined the the aesthetic of this build now. I was kind of excited about that tall building. But that's okay. I'll just load up my save for the cinematics before this area gets abandoned. But I just wanted to show you guys that we have some work to do to fix this area before, it gets really, really bad. But at least it looks good, right? I mean, it looks awesome. So yeah, I guess in the next episode of Bixton, we're really gonna have to pull up our bootstraps and start to fix the city, because things are not looking much better here in Gasparilla. I'm dealing with a bunch of high rent issues here, And oof, I don't know how I'm gonna fix this, guys. It's getting really hard to build this city just because I'm not really playing the game as it's intended in some ways, right? I'm just kind of trying to build a themed build, but the game just doesn't allow for that in certain situations. The game wants high density, but I just want endless American suburbia. So yeah, it's tough. But anyways, we'll figure it out, guys. You guys are smart. I always get tons of comments with really, really great suggestions, so keep them coming, and I'm sure we'll figure out what is happening over here. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode, guys. And you know, despite all the issues that I'm dealing with, I love the progression that we're going through in this series. You know, things are relatively, you know, they're looking good on the surface, like I said. And I'm excited to continue to expand this city into to new areas and get some new and exciting neighborhoods built up. But anyways, I'm going to stop rambling on now and just say I really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Also, drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think. And certainly don't forget to subscribe to the channel to get notified of future uploads. So guys, thanks so much again for watching. And until the next episode, take care.